Before I move to exercise, I also just want to highlight something that comes up every few years and has largely been considered myth now, but that is actually more interesting than most people might think, which is this issue of spot reduction. In the 80s and 90s, there were a lot of commercials, late night infomercials, where they would talk about spot reduction. If you do sit-ups, will you lose abdominal fat? If you do hip raises or glute raises, will you lose glute and hip fat? And I think everybody now believes that and understands that fat metabolism is something that happens systemically throughout the body, that some body fat is quote unquote more stubborn than others. Everyone varies in where they tend to store fat or lose fat last. Number of factors that influence that, in particular hormone receptors. But now, at least in the scientific literature, spot reduction and the possibility of real true spot reductions in fat in a targeted way, a body part or body area targeted way, is becoming more of a reality and may be a reality soon, because exercise that triggers the activation of these nerve fibers, these neurons that innervate fat, in theory, if you can increase the amount of epinephrine released at those particular fat pads, as they're actually called fat pads in the scientific literature, in theory, you could increase mobilization from those particular body fat sites. Okay, so because the new view, that the modern understanding is that it's not adrenaline released systemically, kind of bathing all your fat tissue, but rather it's neurons releasing adrenaline, epinephrine locally, that in theory, exercise that stimulates the release of epinephrine, or exercise coupled with things like shiver or low-grade shaking movement, or the NEAT, the non-exercise activity thermogenesis, could in theory lead to local enhancement of mobilization of fat tissue.